Tom that they need to be fighting for the undisputed title. The White House, it's special. Tom is out. Let's get Pierre versus Surreal, and let's do it for the belt. Well, I think we're close on that. I just think it's the interim belt. And there was some discussion going around that Tom had been asked to vacate the title. The way the story goes is that the UFC asked Tom, vacate the title. You do it. It's a PR thing, right? I mean, it's our belt. We take it back whenever we want, but that's not what we want to do.
Pereira's about to make the biggest mistake of his career, and Tom Aspinall is orchestrating the whole thing from the shadows. While everyone's getting hyped about this White House supercard and Pereira chasing double champion status, there's a Cold War happening behind the scenes that's about to blow everything up. Aspinall isn't just holding an interim belt. He's holding a loaded gun pointed directly at the UFC's entire heavyweight division, and he's not afraid to pull the trigger.
Release me. I'll vacate if you release me. I like your idea. I hear everything you're saying. We can have a discussion about re-signing and coming back in and getting my belt, but it'll keep my options open. If you want me to do this, here's what I want. Now, first off, that doesn't seem like something Tom would say, but this is the way the story goes. And if Tom did say that, respect, because he's standing up for himself. And Tom has the right to stand up for himself, because people do have a very short-term memory on how Tom got to where Tom got. I think they forget that he tore his knee against Curtis Blades, has to fall down and hold.
Here's what nobody's talking about. Aspinall has turned his interim heavyweight title into the most powerful negotiating tool in the sport. Think about it. The UFC wants this massive White House event. They need Pereira to move up to heavyweight to make it happen. But there's one massive problem standing in their way, and his name is Tom Aspinall. He's not just going to hand over his belt so Pereira can waltz into a title shot. He's demanding his rightful shot at the undisputed championship, and every day he doesn't get it, he's making the UFC look weak. This isn't about respect or fairness. This is about power. And right now, Aspinall holds all the cards.
Got outside the first. Got his confidence back, got his momentum back, started to build some steam. I mean, all the stuff he did. He's on a trajectory. He agrees to John Jones. He doesn't hold anybody up for money. He doesn't hold anybody up for time. I mean, he's doing anything that he can do. And frankly, he did everything right. He was a massive team player. He was a massive star. I think you might forget how he captured the interim title in the first place. I think that you might forget about the fight against Sergey Pavlich, where Tom was in England. They put this thing together so fast that Tom's wife couldn't even come and join him. And this is a moment, Madison Square Garden, this is a moment for the family, for the sacrifice of the family.
But here's where it gets absolutely wild. Pereira's team knows something that fans don't. Those weight cuts to light heavyweight are destroying his body. We're talking about a man who used to fight at middleweight, and even that was brutal on his frame. Now he's cutting to 205 pounds, and sources close to the situation say it's getting harder every single camp. His recovery time is longer. His performance in training is declining. And his team is terrified that one bad cut could end his career. So when the UFC comes calling with this heavyweight opportunity, it's not just about legacy. It's about survival.
Thing. Now, I know that Tom wants to box, and that's where you can overplay your hand. There is no boxing out there for Tom. There's no boxing out there for any of them. And boxing also is not what they think. It is not just this huge payday, and it's none of these things that they think that it is. And you do have those outlier stories. You do have a McGregor versus Mayweather, but McGregor versus Mayweather didn't happen because McGregor stood up to the UFC. McGregor versus Mayweather happened and was a success because the greatest carnival barker of...
And get this, Aspinall knows exactly what's happening. He's been watching Pereira struggle with those cuts. He's seen the toll it's taking, and he's using that knowledge like a chess master. Every interview Aspinall gives, every social media post, every public statement is calculated to apply maximum pressure. He's not just calling for his title shot. He's exposing the fact that Pereira might be running from a fight. Think about that. The most feared striker in the UFC being painted as someone who's avoiding competition. That's career-damaging stuff right there.
I wanted to take a gamble on it. I mean, I'm only sharing for you. They're now partners with the UFC. That opportunity's not there. And I don't want to rain on Tom at all. I'm just sharing, if you can box and you can do MMA, it's the same commissions, it's the same process, just by example. And the opportunity would be in MMA. There is no world title opportunity in boxing. There's also no big paycheck in boxing. This is fiction. But Tom would have those options open, and if that's important to...
Now listen to this part. Dana White is caught in the middle of this nightmare scenario. He's got investors breathing down his neck about this White House card. We're talking about potentially the biggest event in UFC history. Celebrity guests, massive pay-per-view numbers, mainstream media attention that money can't buy. But his entire plan depends on Pereira moving up to heavyweight and creating this double champion storyline. Without that narrative, the event loses half its appeal. So White's pushing Pereira hard to make the move, promising him everything under the sun. But there's just one problem. Tom Aspinall isn't playing along.
Something that it'd be a little out of line for the way that Tom would normally operate. So keep that thought and do what you would like with it. But now let's take a look at Alex Pereira, because if Pereira is going to go to if he is going to go to heavyweight, then he needs to be a heavyweight. I don't think that Pereira would disagree with me. I don't think that Pereira would have any problem giving the 205 pounds.
Hold up, did you catch what just happened in Aspinall's last interview? He mentioned boxing, just casually dropped it into conversation like it was nothing. But that wasn't random, that was a threat. Aspinall's telling the UFC that if they don't give him his shot, he's got options. And losing the interim heavyweight champion to boxing would be a disaster for the promotion. Francis Ngannou already embarrassed them by leaving and fighting Aspinall Fury. If Aspinall follows the same path, it makes the UFC look like they can't keep their top talent happy. So now White's not just dealing with scheduling conflicts. He's dealing with the possibility of losing one of his biggest stars.
When he goes into business for himself, he gives the belt back. This wasn't greatly perceived, but it's John, and there's a little room here. And then he sat for 3 years. For 3 years, he stayed out trying to gain the size to be heavyweight. Very humble thing for John to do, because frankly, John could have stepped in and won that heavyweight belt with no time off, but I'm just telling the story the way that it happened. So if Pierre is to do the exact same thing, I'm the light heavyweight champ, I want to pursue the heavyweight championship. Hey, by the way, I don't need any time. Let's go. I can fight light heavyweight on this date, or I can fight heavyweight. Either way, let's go. Gangster move. Very in line with what Alex Pereira...
Here's the kicker. Pereira's fighting IQ, the thing that's made him so successful, might actually be working against him here. He sees the writing on the wall. He knows Aspinall is a nightmare matchup. We're talking about a guy with elite wrestling, devastating knockout power, and the kind of cardio that could expose Pereira's weaknesses in the later rounds. Pereira's built his career on first-round knockouts and early finishes. But what happens when he faces someone who can take his best shot and keep coming? What happens when his body is already compromised from brutal weight cuts? Aspinall represents everything Pereira doesn't want to deal with, wrapped up in one terrifying package.
But I don't think that we're looking at it quite right. I don't think it's bad if they fight for the interim championship at all. At all. I think that's great. I do think if Pereira and Cyril fight, there's got to be a belt. It needs to be scheduled for a potential 5 rounds. Pereira is the champion of the world. If the champion of the world fights, a championship of the world's got to be on the line. That can be the interim. But as opposed to the idea that, hey, it's got to be Tom's belt. Nothing personal, Tom. We got to move on, and it's got to be for the Undisputed Championship. No, I don't agree with that. But I would agree that of that scenario, the one that does have to be stripped or to vacate the belt would be Pereira. And I don't think that Pereira would disagree.
But wait, it gets worse. The optics of this situation are becoming toxic for Pereira's brand. Here's a guy who's been marketed as this fearless warrior, this unstoppable force who conquered 2 divisions. But now it looks like he's abandoning his light heavyweight title to avoid a dangerous fight. Aspinall's team is already pushing that narrative to anyone who will listen. They're painting Pereira as someone who only takes easy fights, who runs when faced with real competition. And in a sport where reputation is everything, that kind of damage can be permanent.
At least let those guys get on with it. If it doesn't work out at heavyweight and I want to go back here, I'll come in, and whoever's champion, I'll see you. I mean, in the words of Israel Adesanya,
you know what's wild? This whole situation exposes the ugly truth about championship politics in the UFC. Belts aren't just about being the best fighter. They're about leverage. They're about money. They're about control. Aspinall figured this out faster than anyone expected. He's not just an interim champion waiting for his turn. He's a businessman using his position to extract maximum value. And the UFC brass, for all their experience and cunning, got outplayed by a guy they thought would just sit quietly and wait his turn. Let me tell you something. The mental warfare happening here is next level. Every day Pereira delays his decision, Aspinall gets stronger. Not physically, but politically. He's building a case in the court of public opinion. He's showing fans that he's the real champion, the guy who actually deserves the recognition. Meanwhile, Pereira's looking more and more like someone who's being pushed around by circumstances beyond his control. That's not the image of a dominant champion. That's the image of someone who's lost control of their own career. Here's where everything falls apart. The White House card was supposed to be this perfect storm of marketing genius. Celebrity attendance, massive mainstream coverage, the kind of event that creates new fans and breaks pay-per-view records. But all of that depends on having the right story to sell. And right now, the story is a mess. Instead of celebrating Pereira's greatness, everyone's talking about whether he's avoiding Aspinall. Instead of building excitement for heavyweight superfights, we're debating the legitimacy of interim titles. The narrative that was supposed to drive this event is collapsing in real time. Time to face reality here. Pereira's body is breaking down, and everyone in the fight game knows it. Those wars at middleweight, the brutal cuts to light heavyweight, the accumulated damage from years of high-level competition. His team sees the medical reports. They know his recovery times are getting longer. They know his performance metrics are declining. Moving to heavyweight isn't just about opportunity. It's about extending his career. But Aspinall's presence turns what should be a smart business decision into a public relations nightmare. And here's something nobody's talking about. The financial implications of this standoff are staggering. We're not just talking about one fight or one event. We're talking about the future earning potential of multiple fighters, the UFC's relationship with broadcast partners, and the long-term value of championship brands. If this White House card falls through because of this heavyweight mess, the ripple effects will be felt for years. Sponsors will lose confidence. Investors will ask tough questions. And fighters will learn that holding interim titles gives them more power than anyone realized. Look at what Aspinall's really doing here. He's not just fighting for a title shot. He's fighting for respect, for recognition, for the acknowledgement that interim champions deserve better than being treated as placeholders. And by taking this stand, he's changing the game for every fighter who comes after him. He's showing them that you don't have to accept whatever scraps the promotion throws your way. You can demand what you're worth. You can fight the system. And sometimes, if you're smart enough and tough enough, you can win. But here's the thing that should terrify Pereira's team. Aspinall isn't going anywhere. He's young, he's hungry, and he's getting better with every fight. Even if Pereira manages to avoid him now, that fight is going to happen eventually. And every month that passes, every brutal training camp, every difficult weight cut, Pereira gets a little bit older and a little bit more vulnerable. Meanwhile, Aspinall's entering his prime. The math on this situation is brutal, and it's not in Pereira's favor. So there you have it. What looked like a simple business decision has turned into the most complex political situation in recent UFC history. Pereira's caught between his body's limitations and his legacy ambitions. Aspinall's using his interim title like a master class in leverage. And Dana White's watching his perfect White House card scenario crumble because he underestimated how smart and ruthless modern fighters can be. This isn't just about who's the better fighter anymore. This is about who understands the game well enough to control their own destiny. And right now, Tom Aspinall is schooling everyone on how it's really done. What do you think happens next? Does Pereira take the heavyweight gamble and risk everything against Aspinall? Or does he find a way to keep his light heavyweight title and avoid this nightmare scenario altogether? Drop your predictions in the comments below. Smash that like button if this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really happening behind the scenes. And subscribe because this heavyweight situation is about to get even more explosive. I'll see you in the next one. The real bomb hasn't even dropped yet. While everyone's focused on this Pereira versus Aspinall chess match, there's another player moving pieces on the board that nobody saw coming. Jon Jones. Yeah, that Jon Jones. The guy who's been sitting on the undisputed heavyweight championship like it's his personal throne. He's been watching this entire situation unfold, and he's about to make a move that changes everything. Because here's what the UFC doesn't want you to know. Jones has a clause in his contract that gives him approval power over his next opponent. And guess what? He's not interested in fighting Tom Aspinall at all. Think about the implications here. Jones spent years building his legacy as the greatest light heavyweight of all time. He moved up to heavyweight specifically to add one more chapter to that legacy. But fighting Aspinall, that's not legacy building, that's legacy risking. Aspinall represents everything that could go wrong for Jones at this stage of his career. Youth, speed, knockout power, and absolutely nothing to lose. Jones didn't move up to heavyweight to prove he could beat the new generation. He moved up to collect another belt and cement his GOAT status. Aspinall threatens to turn that victory lap into a nightmare. But here's where it gets absolutely diabolical. Jones's team has been quietly pushing for the Pereira fight this entire time. Not because they think it's easy, but because they think it's winnable and marketable. Pereira versus Jones sells itself. Two legends, two different combat sports backgrounds, the kind of super fight that transcends MMA. But more importantly for Jones, it's a fight against someone his own age, someone dealing with similar physical limitations, someone who hasn't spent years specifically preparing to dethrone him. Pereira might be dangerous, but he's not the existential threat that Aspinall represents. Now watch this power play unfold. The UFC needs Jones to cooperate because he's still the biggest draw in the heavyweight division. They need Pereira to move up because that's what makes the White House card special. And they need to somehow deal with Aspinall without destroying the credibility of their interim title system. So what's the solution? A tournament. Not officially, but that's essentially what they're creating. Aspinall gets his shot, but not directly at Jones. He gets Pereira first at heavyweight for the right to face Jones. It sounds fair on paper, but it's actually a masterpiece of manipulation. Here's why this setup is genius for everyone except Aspinall. Pereira gets his heavyweight opportunity without having to vacate his light heavyweight title immediately. Jones gets to sit back and watch two dangerous opponents beat each other up before he has to face the winner. And the UFC gets their White House superfight while maintaining the fiction that they respect the interim title system. But for Aspinall, it's a trap. Instead of getting the title shot he's earned, he has to go through another dangerous fight against a guy who has nothing to lose and everything to gain. But Tom Aspinall is way too smart to fall for this obvious setup. His response? He's demanding champion money for the Pereira fight. Not interim champion money, not challenger money. Full champion pay because he's essentially defending his position against someone jumping the line. And you know what? He's absolutely right. If Pereira gets to skip ahead of every other heavyweight contender, if he gets this opportunity based purely on his star power and the UFC's marketing needs, then Aspinall should be compensated like the champion he technically is. This demand is causing panic in the UFC's accounting department. The financial breakdown of this situation is getting ridiculous. Champion-level pay for Aspinall, superstar money for Pereira, Jones demanding his usual massive payday for whenever he fights the winner, plus all the additional costs of making the White House venue work. We're talking about a cost structure that requires this to be one of the biggest pay-per-view events in UFC history just to break even. And that's before factoring in all the production costs, security requirements, and political complications of hosting a fight at the White House. The pressure to deliver massive numbers has never been higher. Speaking of pressure, let's talk about what this is doing to Pereira mentally. This guy built his reputation on being ice-cold under pressure, but this is different. This isn't about fighting. This is about business, politics, and long-term career planning, things that are completely outside his comfort zone. His team is telling him one thing, the UFC is promising him another, and Aspinall is publicly challenging his credibility every single day. For a guy who's used to solving problems with his fists, this kind of psychological warfare is uncharted territory. And Aspinall keeps turning the screws. His latest social media posts aren't even about fighting anymore. They're about business ethics, about fairness in competition, about whether the UFC actually cares about creating legitimate champions or just manufacturing entertainment. He's positioning himself as the voice of every fighter who's ever been passed over for a more marketable opponent. Every contender who's ever watched someone jump the line because of their social media following or their ability to sell pay-per-views. This isn't just about his title shot anymore. This is about the soul of competitive MMA. The international implications are getting crazy too. Aspinall's British fanbase is treating this like a national pride issue. They're organizing boycotts of UFC events that don't feature their guy getting his deserved shot. British sports media is covering this like it's a diplomatic incident. Meanwhile, Brazilian fans are split between supporting Pereira's heavyweight move and criticizing him for potentially abandoning his light heavyweight crown. The UFC's international broadcast partners are starting to ask questions about how this affects their regional marketing strategies. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Aspinall's been studying tape not just of potential opponents, but of successful negotiations in combat sports. He's watched how Floyd Mayweather controlled his career trajectory, how Conor McGregor leveraged his popularity into unprecedented deals, how fighters like Ngannou walked away when they didn't get what they wanted. He's not just training to be a better fighter, he's training to be a better businessman. And that makes him more dangerous than any opponent he could face in the octagon. The medical angle of this story keeps getting darker. Sources close to Pereira's camp are whispering about the toll those light heavyweight cuts are taking. We're not just talking about difficult weight management anymore. We're talking about potential long-term health consequences. Kidney function, brain health, cardiovascular stress. His doctors aren't just recommending the heavyweight move for competitive reasons. They're recommending it for survival reasons. But publicly admitting that would destroy his negotiating position and make him look vulnerable to future opponents. Meanwhile, Aspinall's team is leaking information about his training camps that should terrify everyone in the heavyweight division. This guy isn't just maintaining his skills during this political standoff. He's evolving them. New wrestling coaches, improved striking techniques, enhanced conditioning programs. Every day he doesn't get his title shot is another day he's getting more dangerous. By the time this situation resolves, he might be an even more formidable opponent than he is right now. The ripple effects are spreading beyond just these three fighters. Other interim champions in UFC history are speaking out about their experiences. Former champions are weighing in on social media. Current contenders in other divisions are watching closely to see if Aspinall's tactics work, because if they do, it changes the playbook for every fighter who feels like they're being treated unfairly by the promotion. This could be the beginning of a fundamental shift in fighter-promotion relationships. Dana White's public statements about this situation are getting more defensive by the week. He's going from confident promotion to damage control. Every press conference, every interview, every social media interaction, he's being asked about the heavyweight title situation. And his answers are getting shorter and more irritated. That's not the body language of someone who has everything under control. That's the body language of someone who's being backed into a corner by circumstances he didn't anticipate. The betting markets are reflecting the chaos too. Odds on potential matchups are shifting wildly based on every rumor, every social media post, every cryptic interview answer. Professional gamblers are staying away from heavyweight futures because there are too many unknown variables. When the smart money doesn't know what to do, you know the situation has moved beyond normal business operations into pure unpredictability. But here's the most insane part of this entire situation. What if Aspinall's strategy backfires? What if the UFC decides that dealing with his demands isn't worth the headache? What if they strip him of his interim title and just book Pereira versus Jones directly? Aspinall would go from holding all the leverage to holding nothing but his reputation and his skill set. It's the ultimate high-stakes gamble. He's betting everything on the UFC's need to maintain the credibility of their championship system. But what if he's wrong about how much that credibility is actually worth to them? The answer to that question might determine not just the future of the heavyweight division, but the future of how fighters negotiate with the UFC. If Aspinall wins this standoff, every future interim champion will know they have real power. If he loses, it sends a message that the promotion will always prioritize marketability over competitive legitimacy. Either way, we're watching history being made. Not in the octagon, but in the boardrooms and negotiating tables, where the real battles for control of this sport are being fought.